So there's a question I've always wanted to ask you in relation to focus. Fear is not something that I would say stops me from doing many things.
It should.
But there is one thing.
We would like you to never step forward in the face of fear ever.
And I understand that. Jerry's told a great story before about a guy on a horse and he ended up getting his teeth kicked in. My question about it is, one of the things I'd love to do is I'd love to dive, but my fear of sharks seems to be completely unreasonable. The chances of being bitten by a shark are, I think, less than, you've been in a plane crash.
Not for you. Not for you. They're
not for me.
Much higher for you.
Exactly. I mean, it's.
How do you think the shark chooses its lunch?
I have an answer to that I won't give. But how do I use what you teach to help me get over the fear of sharks? Because I love being in the water.
By taking sharks out of the equation.
We
said take money out of the equation, take time out of the equation. Now we're saying take sharks out of the equation. Because when you factor the shark into diving, you don't dive. Yeah. When you take the shark out of the equation, then Esther was watching television with Jerry the other night, and they showed a giant squid that they'd found somewhere. And Esther said, do you remember when that was the way they horrified us in movies? It was always a giant octopus that wrapped its arms and legs around our boat or whatever we were in. Esther said, oh, wouldn't it be lovely to go back to the time when that was the biggest thing we had to worry about, was a squid. What we're wanting to say, Jerry and Esther were snorkeling a few years ago, and all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people who were native to the area, who were on the boat with them, jumped in the water. And Esther said to the guide, why did they all jump in the water? And he said, someone saw a shark. And Esther said, I'm confused. That's when I would be getting out of the water. Why did they jump into the water when they saw a shark? And he said, because the shark is interesting. The shark is a wonderful beast in the water, and people who swim know that. In other words, they know that the shark is not looking for you.
But I think it's looking for me.
Just like you would be the one that would get the speeding ticket if you're worried about that. You'd be the one that the shark might tease a little bit and chew on maybe a little. But we've been playing with you. But here's what we would do. If we had a passion to do something, but a fear of something involved in it, we would find a way of convincing ourselves that we could have one without the other. So we would do things like we would talk about, well, I will dive in the areas where sharks are very rare, or I will dive in the areas where people who have seen the sharks understand that they are peaceful, or I will send others out ahead of me, and if anybody sees a shark, then I will just get out of the water, or I will always dive. I will go to the Bahamas, or I will go to the Caribbean, or I will go to Hawaii, where the waters are so clear that I can see very far away, and I will always have big fins, and I will not swim very far from my boat, so that when I'm using my very good eyes and I see something that I don't want, I will be able to retreat if I'm wanting to. I'll just take baby steps in this until I convince myself that I am as safe and as warm and as well in the water as the fishes in the sea. And when I get to that place in my mind, so that it feels more like I want to go than more like I don't want to go. In other words, that's what we meant earlier when we said, if we were standing in your physical snorkeling flippers, if we were standing in your physical snorkeling gear, we would not get into the water and feel fear at the same time. We would take the time to resolve that feeling of fear, and we would work on it enough in our mind that the feeling of fear is replaced with a feeling of enthusiasm, with a feeling of adventure, with a feeling of excitement, with a feeling of wanting to be in the water. And then when you feel like that and you get in the water, oh, what a glorious experience it is. There are so many people, they're well-meaning but so misguided, who believe that they'll help you by pointing out potential problems. And they don't realize that pointing out the potential problems just activates the problem within you and prevents you from going to the solutions that you would naturally find if it were not for their well-meaning prodding. Sharks are not a problem. Sharks don't want anything to do with you.
Okay.
Sharks
feel
are
better.
happy in their environment. When they're hungry, there are far better things for them to eat. They're not after you. They're not after anybody. So that's all downstream. Now you're about to say, but what about the guy that got eaten off his surfboard?
Well, I was just about to say, the last time I went to Hawaii, I got to tell this story. So the
Of course you do.
The beach that I was in, I was very careful. I got on the water. I managed to turn the fear blinker off. And I went out 14, 15 feet. I could see what I was doing. It was clear as day. It was beautiful. And my confidence built up and up and up. And eventually I was going out further and I was diving down a little bit deeper. A week later, somebody was attacked on that exact same beach about 20 feet from where I'd been swimming. And it was a young girl. Her arm was actually bitten off. And to me, it just kind of reinforced.
But here's the thing that we really want you to hear. When your intention is for well-being, and you've been practicing finding well-being in your mind, and you go to the beach with the intention of swimming, and you are overcome by fear, don't go in the water.
Oh, I understand that.
But when you feel fine, then go in the water. In other words, you cannot measure what happens to other people and then use it as the impetus to help you decide what you will or will not do, because you do not know what the vibrational attitude of any of that was, you see.
Right. So if I'm feeling good, I basically won't be bitten. Is that what you're saying?
What we are saying is, as you have this desire to have this wonderful time in the ocean, and you have had feelings of fear about it, but that you've worked your way through it, and so you've come into this vision of swimming and feeling the water and enjoying the beauty of the ocean, and that is the vibration that is within you, you would not be called to a place where there was anything other than that. But if you are someone who's been beating the drum of being afraid of something, and you are overcoming your fear by forcing yourself into action even though you feel uncomfortable, then you could be a vibrational match to the very thing you fear.
And that I do understand.
And
that,
that's why the first thing we said to you is we would never move forward in fear. Not because there's something out there that's going to get you, but because you haven't done the vibrational work first. We would not do anything. We would take no action without first doing some vibrational work. It's what the process called segment intending is about. We would not drive across town for dinner without sitting in our car and feeling appreciation for its performance, and appreciation of our clarity and our ability to drive, an appreciation for the other drivers, an appreciation for the roadways. We would get into a mode of appreciation before we drive anywhere, not because we're trying to keep from getting run over by a truck, but because in that appreciation, the best that that traffic has to offer us would be ours. And if you do that drive after drive, day after day, before you know it, you're only in alignment with well-being relative to that subject and the next subject and the next subject. In other words, the way you line up with well-being is by practicing the thought and subsequent feeling of well-being. The way you line up with danger and things you don't want is by practicing the thought of it. And that's why bad things happen to little kids, because they're surrounded by people that are pushing against this and pushing against that and afraid of that and saying, watch out for that, activating those fearful things within them. Nothing bad can happen to you when you're feeling good. It is law. But it's your job to feel good, because you can't rid the world of the bad things. They're not going away. First of all, the shark doesn't know it's bad. It's not leaving. Good time for a segment of refreshment. We are complete.